Hey everyone, Blake Lovell, Southeastern 14, back here looking at more SEC basketball roster moves. If you're an Arkansas fan wondering why we're not talking about Keon Minifield in this particular video, check out the one I did separately on that. It's here on the channel, so be sure to look at that one. But this one is sort of catching up on a lot of roster movement. As always, some of these perhaps, again, more NBA transferring away type, scenarios, but there is one in terms of a key transfer, perhaps, for the South Carolina Gamecocks, because South Carolina lands Stephen Clark from the Citadel. If you're wondering why the Citadel sounds familiar for South Carolina, that's because, of course, they picked up Peyton Brown there, and he had a successful season for the Gamecocks last year. So going back to the Citadel here for this one for Stephen Clark, someone who, I think you look at what he could bring to the table here for the Gamecocks. He is someone that at 6'8", an older player, has played, I think, at least 32 minutes the past 2 seasons there at the Citadel. He's played pretty much every season in college, averaged 15.5 minutes per game as a freshman, but he's improved his scoring, again, 16.3 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, shot at almost 50% from the field. And I think, again, bring some size for South Carolina team that obviously is going to lose some size when you look at the exit of Gigi Jackson. But I think this is one that I do look at and feel like there's a really good kind of fit here, perhaps, for Stephen Clark going to South Carolina because, someone that he's a North Carolina native. So obviously geography can play a role there. But of course, he was at the Citadel. And, someone I think that can certainly help them, as we talked about with South Carolina. It's a program that we knew was going to be in transition for Lamont Paris in his first season, although they didn't start great. We talked about, getting blown out in some of those games, but they felt like they continually got better. And I think that's something they can try to build on, even with what's probably going to be a new look roster. They have some guys returning, but you add Clark to the mix. We've also talked about Talon Cooper from Minnesota, someone else who's played a ton of minutes, and I think will really be a great addition for them. So you add Cooper, you add Clark to the mix, and those are two key pickups, I think, for South Carolina early on here in the transfer portal. And yes, I said early on because we know this thing will continue to go on and on and on. That's the way the transfer portal works. But South Carolina do have some spots to fill. I think they still have multiple scholarship spots available. So don't be surprised if the Gamecocks continue to do some work there with Lamont Paris in the transfer portal. But Stephen Clark, someone gives them some size, and again, someone who can kind of do a little bit of everything. Also block some shots. Has averaged pretty much 2.5 blocks per game the past 3 seasons. So I think that will be a very helpful addition for South Carolina for getting someone like this who was a second team all SoCon selection last season. So Stephen Clark heading to South Carolina. Talking about exits, Jayden Bradley is transferring out from Alabama. That was one that I think, may have caught some people by surprise because, we talked about kind of that freshman class for Alabama and, knowing just the talent that they were going to be bringing in and all the things they could do. But Jayden Bradley leaving, I think sometimes, I think watching him play, to me, he was clearly an SEC type player. Watching him play last season, it's just a matter of, was he going to be the guy that would excel in, I think, Alabama's style of play? And I think that is something that, perhaps you wonder if that was going to be the perfect fit. We always talk about the shooting element and those things. I know a lot of people have already discussed kind of this transfer with Bradley. It brought up, just I think looking at improving, your shot and those kind of things. And just wondering, was it going to be the perfect fit, perhaps just in the style, understanding kind of all the elements to go into it, and what I think Nate Oates expects in terms of, again, the shooting element, all those kind of things. So I still thought you could see a lot of positive things from Jayden Bradley as a freshman and, played 20 minutes per game. Percentages, again, probably were not where he necessarily wanted them to be, but I do think he's someone that will have a lot of success, elsewhere. I really do, because I can remember at the SEC tournament, actually, we were sitting there courtside, and I remember just watching him, and may have been Chris actually beside me. We were talking, and I said, man, that like Jayden Bradley, he's an SEC player. Like, he just seems like he's someone that can really excel in this league. And, just a matter of seeing, I guess, where he winds up. And as we always say, by the time I record this and release this, who knows? Maybe somewhere else. I have no idea. But we sort of, again, sort of track where guys are at, and where they're headed. So I think we will again see what happens with Jayden Bradley. But I highly anticipate there being some teams very interested, I think, in him. And we just saw kind of I think the evolution for Javon Quinterly just sort of played into that. And if you look at Quinterly possibly returning to Alabama and those kind of things, it certainly makes sense. I think if you're Bradley, to see what's available out there, and that's what we always say, right? With these guys now, it's just, hey, it's the option is available to you. NIL, all those other things. There's so many different opportunities. So maybe it's one that surprises you. I think still, Alabama fans would probably still like to have him on the roster because he's a very talented player, but you're not going to blame a guy for wanting to see if there's more opportunity, out there, especially again, seeing kind of the Quinterly's game evolve to the point that it did. If he returns, you kind of know, I think, what that's going to look like next season in terms of Quinterly getting a lot of minutes. But Bradley just started, I think, 20 plus games this year. So yeah, got some valuable experience, and we'll see where he winds up there. But moving on to the NBA draft, because we do have a couple guys in particular in the draft. And as I always say, I think we've covered a lot of this, but there may be some things we haven't yet. But I'm doing the best I can here, guys, trying to keep up with all these roster moves. Antonio Reeves, Kentucky, declaring for the NBA draft. Someone else I think that, look, the NBA, I can tell you without hesitation, NBA teams want guys who can make shots, and Antonio Reeves can make shots. And I think that will be something that will give him a great opportunity to excel at the next level. I think he's right now probably looking at, if he was going to be drafted this season, certainly I think you're looking at a second round type pick type of guy. It just depends on where that is, right? In terms of what opportunities, like we just said with Bradley, and really anyone, whether you're transferring, whether it's the NBA draft, what opportunities are available out there, for him in terms of, hey, going to the NBA, will he have kind of that right fit? And again, where could he be drafted and all those things? If he gets sort of that guarantee, hey, we're going to take you here, or we're going to take you there in the second round, then why would he not, right? But I think he still technically can return to Kentucky, and I think the door was left open for him to do that. So if you think of it that way, if Antonio Reeves were to return to Kentucky, and right now, like I said, I don't know that you have a great feel one way or the other. I think there's certainly a higher chance than anyone else probably we've talked about so far that is declared for the draft, Kentucky wise. But if you talk about Antonio Reeves potentially returning, adding him to the mix with this just very, very talented freshman class that Kentucky has coming in addition to what you would expect will be some other additions to the roster. I mean, they are going to be something. And I know, non-Kentucky fans, even some Kentucky fans who are frustrated, they may hear that and say, well, we say this every year, right? Boy, this team's going to be special. But all I'm saying, having a guy like Antonio Reeves potentially returning, we saw what he can do this season. I know, didn't have a great game against Kansas State. I know. But we talked about him a lot this year in terms of just having a guy who can go off at any time and how much that can change the game. He can change the game. And I think it will be very interesting to see again. I think there will be a lot of NBA teams that value that ability in him just to be able to step out and make shots. But, will it be kind of the better fit for him, or could he return to Kentucky? And again, we talk about NIL, all that stuff. Is it a better opportunity to come back, play another season in Kentucky on a team that, quite frankly, again, like it or not, will be ranked in the top probably 5 next season at worst? I just think that's where things are going to land for Kentucky. So, Antonio Reeves declaring for the NBA draft. We'll see what happens there. As always, guys can go through the process, and you just never know when you can really improve your stock. And I think someone like Reeves is the kind of guy who can improve his stock because, like I said, it's just teams want guys who can make shots, and especially knocking down shots from outside is a very valuable resource in basketball. So I think Antonio Reeves will have a lot of attention on him as he goes through this draft process. Just a matter of seeing can he get sort of that second round guarantee, or does he make that return to Kentucky? And boy, if he does, yeah, they're going to be really, really good. So yeah, that goes without saying probably. But let's talk about Ricky Council because we mentioned Arkansas picking up Keon Minifield in the transfer portal from Washington. But another exit here, as you look at Ricky Council declaring for the NBA draft. No surprise here. Ricky Council is probably going to be, I would say, looking at some of the mocks I pulled up, seems like what, early to mid second round pick type guy. I think will probably be where he winds up. I think technically, as I said, can still return, but I just have a hard time seeing this one. I think Ricky Council again will be a very valuable asset for an NBA team, and I think he is someone as well that will improve his stock as he goes throughout the process. I just feel like he is. I mean, what we kind of call him the Iron Man, right? Like he's the Iron Man for Arkansas. When you really think about it, I mean, someone who we talked about just the number of minutes he played. He stepped up in so many key spots, especially we mentioned the NCAA tournament games and all that. I mean, just he was a warrior for the Razorbacks this past season, and I think he is someone just when you look at the overall part of his game and just the versatility that he has, I would find it hard to believe that he's not going to really, I think, have a pretty good NBA career because I think he does. He has the versatility. He just seems like one of those guys that can stick on an NBA roster for a long time. And I think it's just, again, watching him play and seeing all the different elements that he has to his game. And those will only continue to get better as, if you get into the pro ranks, you're developing in a lot of different areas. And so I think, he will only continue to get stronger, I think, at his strengths just because of once you get into that sort of level of play and you're starting to play against NBA guys and all those things on a nightly basis, like it allows you the opportunity to really grow as a player. So I think Ricky Council will again, to me, it's just a matter of where he's going to be drafted. But I think somewhere again, early mid second round, something like that, perhaps for him. But as I always say, you never know with these draft projections. Guys can just go in and wow scouts and teams and feel like, hey, all of a sudden you become a much higher prospect than maybe people projected. But I do think Ricky Council is going to have a really good, long type of career in the NBA because I think he has, again, all those things that sort of the intangibles that I feel like he can become a specialist in certain areas for different teams and those kind of things. So Ricky Council headed to the NBA draft, and we will keep up with all the roster movement in the SEC, not just for guys that are transferring in and out, but we'll also keep up with the NBA draft process for, again, players that have played in the SEC and look at potential fits. We might go into doing some fun little mock draft stuff with different guys and looking at things for some of these players, but we will follow kind of their process as they go along, who could return, who could stay, all those kind of things we'll take a look at here at Southeastern 14. But as always, we appreciate your support. Hit that subscribe button. And again, be sure to hit that like button as well. That helps us out. A lot of SEC basketball roster movement stuff here in the offseason. We'll be covering it pretty much every day, it seems like, because as you know, there's pretty much something going on every day. We're going to start our State of the Program series. That'll probably start next week as we get more guys moving around because it's kind of hard to do that just yet because we got a lot of roster movement. So we'll start to look at more of that probably over the next week or two and just kind of get a good picture of where the program's at, looking ahead, all those different things. We'll do that for all 14 programs in the SEC. And again, a lot of SEC offseason football stuff we're doing. Blaine's got a lot of stuff going up there. Check it out. Chris is doing SEC baseball. We got all sorts of stuff here at Southeastern 14, and we thank our proud sponsor at Bearded Iris Brewing. We've mentioned them before. We did the live show there during the SEC tournament, so be sure to check out our friends at Bearded Iris. Look in the description below. You'll see the link there to their website. Check out all the great things they have to offer. And if you're, visiting, check out Bearded Iris. They do a great job there at that establishment. So, again, we appreciate you guys as always, and we'll be back with more SEC basketball roster movement because it never stops. We'll be back with more here at Southeastern 14.